have you ever wondered or even thought about why you actually work? For what reason? Money? Passion for what you do? Many of my colleagues fall in the passion group. I mean, they've been studying stuff for years. They've been honing their skills. And then it's just so fantastic to do stuff that you've kind of, I don't know, you've been training years to do. And what? It makes stuff better, right? So you've been honing your skills and now you make great software. But are you sure about that? I'm here today to convince you that sometimes it's a good idea to hold back. Not to do the stuff that you love, but instead kind of stand on the sideline. And in order to make you understand that, I have to tell you some examples of what I've been doing in my past projects, because holding back is hard and actually feels bad at the moment and in the first times. But in order to understand this, I'll first have to tell you that what I actually do. So I'm a user interface designer, which is I build tools in software. I design how they behave so that someone else can code them, and sometimes I even code them myself. To understand how that goes, let's just pick an example. A past project, I was doing, what should we call it? Credit card transaction processing software. The thing is, at a credit card operator, they have a huge amount of transactions each day. And they have this system, kind of AI, but probably more like rule-based, which takes out transactions that seem suspicious, so that there might be something fishy going on. But since AI or rules are not very good in defining that is it actually okay or not, this list produced by the system is given for humans to check. So my job is to go to see one of those humans, let's call her Nadine, to see what Nadine does for her work. So I go by her, sit by her side, and she does her work. And I watch what she does, and then based on that knowledge, I build a tool for her. So what's the suspicious transaction? A lot of money, for example, say 30,000 euros. It's suspicious in certain circumstances, and sometimes it's not. I mean, 30,000 euros for which the recipient is a car dealership. Probably okay, not even a very expensive car. But if the recipient is a candy kiosk, oh, this could be fishy, could be a typo, there's something wrong. And so the humans, and in this case, Nadine, kind of checks out that everything is okay. And when I checked, for example, in this case, I followed what Nadine did, it turned out that 80% of all the cases, there are 6 pieces of information that Nadine needs to tell that whether things are okay or not. So a simple user interface tool is to have a list which has 6 columns, And then Nadine just kind of glimpses through the list and kind of can mark away that these are okay, okay, okay. And you get the remaining fishy ones. Sometimes she can kind of do some extra processing with those. But the basic idea is that it's a simple list or table of 6 columns. And that's my magic. I know what the right 6 columns are. So that's what I do. So where's the holding back? What about the rest 20%? Those are the hairy cases. I mean, they are really difficult to solve. The problem with those transactions is that they don't resemble each other very much. Or the things that are wrong in them, they are kind of rather unique. How many pieces of information there actually are for one credit card transaction? Well, look at your receipts. You'll see probably, I don't know, 30. But just to tell the whole truth, there are about 100 pieces of information for each credit card transaction that you ever make. There are at least 10 dates, for example, and timestamps and that. There's incredible amount of information, so clearly we cannot solve this by doing a table with 100 columns. No, we need more sophisticated tools. Like, let's have filtering, and let's have, I don't know, could we have formulas, and perhaps sorting, and perhaps you could move the fields adjacent to each other, and stop. And hold back. Let's do an Excel, export to Excel button. Case closed. Why? Because it hurt so much. I just took away my own kind of, what a design challenge. But the thing is, those are only 20% of all the cases. I'm not saying that they aren't important. You have to solve them. But you don't need to re-implement Excel for Nadine. Because Nadine can use Excel just fine. She uses it all the time. So why would we be repeating Excel in our software? Because that's hard. I mean, yeah, we could probably manage the design. Probably. Design a better Excel does not sound like not a very hard task. What do you think? But someone has to implement that as well. And yeah, that's going to be pretty time consuming. So we can kind of just hold back and give her the button. And this is a very typical scenario. Do not re-implement Excel. Do not re-implement email. Do not re-implement text messaging. Instead, use them. Because, well, of all the systems that I've seen that have tried to re-implement these things, the re-implementations haven't been that good. So let's not do it. Let's hold back and just have the button. But that's hard. And sometimes following or checking out the money can help you make this decision. But for that, we need another example. Back in the days, I was working at a Finnish tele operator, creating the self-service for customers to fill it around with their mobile subscriptions, their broadband subscriptions, all that stuff. And we started from zero. There was no self-service at all because of reasons which are beyond today. And we managed to build that self-service bit by bit, and it was a roaring success. That's the only project I've ever had so far in my life where the effort of my team could be totally measured in money, because each time we released a new thing, we could see how the requests for the kind of manual handling dropped down, and those could be attached to euros, so we could see how many euros we just saved. Holy shit, that was great. And it was success after success after success, so we kind of got used to the high five after the going to production and stuff like that. Things went rather smoothly for a long time. But after a while, a couple of years, we started to move on to products that were not used that frequently. And after launching the very nice controlling and order new stuff UI of that, we were kind of very happy ourselves until someone counted the money. You know, it turned out that the estimated profits for that product during its whole estimated lifetime were less than the money we had just spent in developing the UI. Oh man, how could we do this? That's not the worst part. I guess you can guess what the worst part was. The backlog was filled with products that were used even less. We have to implement that stuff too. We could just kind of put money in the stockpile and just burn it. How the hell are we going to walk out of this? But hey, luckily, our PO managed to come up with a solution that, hey, the problem is that we want people to have kind of a formalized input so that their orders would be kind of, you know, they've given us all the right information. So let's make a form machine which has all kind of, which has some components, and even the POs of the remaining products can define themselves what the questions there kind of are. And then once the form is kind of complete, just press send, and it goes to a defined email address, and someone manually processes it. That was just fine. That was what we did, and it worked just well. No design. Oh, well, yeah, we had to design the components, but I mean, practically, no design. Is there an example where there would actually be no UI at all? Sure. A system for keeping billable hours. Has different kinds of user groups and has been used for years. And then one day, we get a request that, okay, there's this one new user group, kind of small business owners, who want to know once a month their employees' entered hours. But we have no kind of previous credentials for them. This is the only thing that they are ever going to do in the system. So we were like, oh shit, because we're gonna have to create now these new type of users. We have to somehow tie the other users to this specific user who's requesting the report, and then there has to be this page where this has to be this report, and it seems like a lot of work for kind of a small thing. But then we realized that, okay, well, let's not do it. Let's hold back. These people are rather technical, so let's do a CSV file API. So once a month, they request with the URL a CSV file which has the information they need. How do we define that information? Well, we authenticate them with tokens which kind of have the ability, in addition to authenticate them, to restrict their kind of viewpoint to a certain set of data, which we can make sure that that is correct. Case closed, no UI. Or you can have a no UI in another sense, like a system for gigs and job applicants in the construction site business. New gigs appear often, but new construction sites, not that often. So during the time I was in that project, I believe we never implemented a user interface to create a new construction site. So how did they do that? Well, we put in a phone number. Once the user calls that phone number, the phone on the windowsill of the development team rings. You need a construction site? All right, I'll make it to you. Directly to the database. If you think this is kind of unconventional, I just, well, think again. You don't have to solve all things with software, although you're doing software. So far, we've been tackling problems that we think that are necessary to solve. That's not always the case. What if we attack the, well, attack is a bad word, but what if we kind of attack the problem? Say, another system which has job applicants and gigs, and the users of that system, when they kind of try to do the perfect match, and they have this perfect gig and perfect job, they find the exactly right job applicants for that one, and they call them, and it turns out that, yeah, well, they took another gig from some other company or some other system. This results in that they ask us that, hey, it would be just, things would be so much better if we would have information of the job applicants, which would be totally kind of the, that are they available or not, would be kind of very current. So now that you've kind of been accustomed to the hold back thing, can you guess what the next question is? It's like, oh, are you sure about that? Let's see. Let's do an experiment. And the experiment, in this case, was that for the following 4 weeks, someone called all the job applicants once a week to check whether they were still available. We could have done that twice a week, but I believe we did it only once a week. And now, after that 4-week period, we could know whether we should actually tackle this design problem or no. If the evidence supports it, yes. But if it didn't make a big difference, the problem is elsewhere. And result, no design. My last example needs a bit of kind of asking you some stuff. So, how many of you have in your life set up a network card? Yeah, in the good old days, I mean, yeah, so many hands. You remember the stuff? You enter the IP addresses, the broadcast address. That sucked. But yeah, you could have the kind of network address as IP as well. Yeah, but that was not the old times that I'm very much missing. And then there's this other experience. You try to put up your personal email, or your, better example, company email, in some kind of a new software, an email software. And you enter the server name, and you enter your username and password. And then it starts. POP or IMAP? Shit, I think it was IMAP. What port? That depends on whether it was IMAP or POP, but yeah, I can check always the internet. But it gets worse, it gets worse. SSL, TLS, or nothing. Shit, I don't know. I thought I was technical myself. I just have to go ask someone. How many has had this experience? Oh, yeah, even more has. Oh, you should go just kind of install some network cards as well. It's kind of interesting business. Yeah, but okay. Hey, how does your mom connect to the internet these days? Yeah, I don't know, but my mom enters the Wi-Fi address, the Wi-Fi name, and the password. And then magic happens. Something configures her network card. That's called DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. Yeah. Or then, my mom buys a new phone. And what does she put in the phone when she tries to get her emails there? She puts in the server name, username, password. And it's configured. It just figured out itself that is it SSL or TLS or POP or IMAP or whatever. That's magic. But who fixed it? It wasn't the user interface designer. The role of the user interface designer in this case is to become a sponsor or a person who, I don't know, demands, enlightens, encourages, coerces, teases until someone else does their magic. Because what can a user interface designer do in this case? A form with nicer rounded corners doesn't help very much. So what have we got so far? We've got the Excel export. We've got the form machine. We've got phone number as a UI. What else? Well, this magic of someone else. We've got like setting up the network card and all these other examples. Why? My claim is that doing all this stuff actually creates more simple software. See, by time, when we try to respond to all the things that are asked from us, that could the software do this? And I got this new feature idea that or this thing that needs support. We give that support. But as a result, the software becomes gradually more complex. And that's a bad thing. Because simple software is more easy to use than complex software. And thus, we should try to hold back sometimes. But there's another reason, which is perhaps even more important. Now, we have studied and fine-tuned our skills, and that has given us great power, be that power developing or designing artificial intelligence, whatever. With that great power also comes great responsibility. Responsibility of where we choose to use that power. So my advice is restrict your love, hold back, let go, so that when the time arises and you have the perfect opportunity of doing stuff that needs your magic, then you just hit it with full force, with all your skills. And you have good chances in being part of creating software that is significant, makes a difference, and is almost like magic. Thank you.
Thanks, Karri. First of all, I need to ask about your mum's Wi-Fi.
Yeah, she asks me a lot about that herself.
Well, here we go. You're going to be used to this then. Surely you would say that adding magic, like, DHCP to software, actually makes it more complex as software.
Yeah, it actually does. But the thing is, there's kind of good complexity and there's bad complexity. I mean, making things secure, like SSL and things like that, they are horrendously complex. But it's a good thing. They just work. And the same thing is with DHCP. But then there's this other type of complexity, which is kind of hard to define, but it's kind of like a hammer is a simple tool and a saw is a simple tool, but a Swiss Army knife is not a simple tool. And it kind of, once you have the software that feels like, has that feeling that this is hard, and that's difficult. It's stupid. We shouldn't be doing that.
Fair enough. I think that's a good point. Do we have any questions in the audience here? Pop your hand up if you have a question, and we'll bring the mic right there.
Yeah, so I found myself nodding to pretty much everything you said, so great speech. My question was that as consultants, we are often brought in to solve the customer's problems at some level, and oftentimes I find myself in positions where we are trying to solve the wrong problem. That my question is that how do we get into these conversations, to these uncomfortable conversations about the whole reason why we're there, and trying to maybe change the customer's mind about whether they want to build this proposed solution at all in the first place?
Yeah, I think that is a very essential question. My personal kind of way of tackling this is to be brutally honest. That once I understand that the customer is kind of doing something that they should not be doing, I kind of try with questions and kind of all this kind of stuff lead them to understand it themselves. And I believe that actually as consultants, if we have a business that can tolerate this kind of thing, we could actually also walk out of the project if we kind of realize that we are doing the right thing. But this is kind of course, this is a huge kind of risk from, I mean, some salesperson has done a terrific job to land us in the gig, but still, sometimes it would be best to walk out if we're kind of doing the wrong thing. Or then, I think we have in Reaktor some history of doing kind of going in to do a web shop and ending up doing something totally different. So that kind of the budget is there, but let's just change what we do with the budget. Depends on the customer if that can be done or whether not. But I mean, I would personally feel very bad about doing something that I would know that the customer would kind of be, that they would not need, or that it could actually even hurt them, or it would be the totally wrong thing to do.
Any more questions in the audience? Pop your hand up if you have something you'd like to ask Karri. While you think about that, I do have one online for you. So someone says, I love Richard Feynman and his technique. Number 1, identify subject. 2, teach it to a child. 3, identify your knowledge gaps. 4, organize, simplify, and tell a story. Have you applied this?
To my speech, I suppose.
I don't know.
Oh, well.
I assume projects, but...
In projects, I think the best answer is I kind of, this does not kind of resonate what I've been doing, but I suppose the things that I do in the professional scene, which I, by the way, didn't tell the whole story, how the kind of, it's not only kind of watching the users, it's also that you kind of have to test the designs with the users and do things like this. But I guess it's a bit similar to that. But I have to check that out. This is
definitely
new and fascinating to me.
Yeah, I must say it sounds like something we do a lot in content design. So
okay.
So I think there might be some interesting analogies there.
Sure.
To check out.
Yeah, but I need the kind of the name from you later on, so that I can check that out.
Let's do that. Any questions for this gentleman right there? Do we have the mic? Perfect.
Thanks for the very educational talk. Now there is this feeling, I know, when you miss that moment to hold back, and only later you realize, okay, this went totally wrong. We shouldn't have been doing this, but now it's 1-2 weeks later, or maybe half a year or something, and then you realize, okay, we should have done it differently. How to gracefully handle that situation?
So hard questions. I mean, so relevant, but so hard. I don't know. I've been in that position, and one of the kind of the greatest questions on doing software is to convince a client that yeah we actually already implemented it, but this is actually a piece of shit. It shouldn't be in this software. So we've kind of done this, but can we just take it away? And of course they're going to say no, but then it's a kind of something we need to try to do, somehow try to convince them to do that. And I must say that my track record in this isn't very good. I've tried kind of to justify that, okay, you know, this, if you understand software, we have this piece which we did kind of by mistake, and it's not very much used. And you know, every time we update the software, we need to probably touch this part. So this is actually not generating value, but generating costs and so on. But hey, people still kind of feel that doing software is like putting money in a piggy bank, which is not always the case. Yeah, I'm sorry, my track record is bad.
Great questions. Do we have any more in the audience? I have one final question for you.
Okay.
I love what you said about designers as sponsors, where it really sounds like we as designers should stop thinking about design as draw a UI or draw a box. We should almost like let ourselves out of that box. How do you want to say a couple of words about the role of the designer, the way you see it? What should we be doing?
So hard questions. I think that the most essential role of a designer is to kind of be part of the team. I mean, this is also the role of a developer. I mean, what we're trying to do is we're trying to solve someone's problems. It is not always our skills that lead to kind of solving it. So you do what seems to be best at the moment. Back in my days, I've been stacking candy and the refreshments in the fridge because it was the best thing I could do at the moment. There was nothing else to do. Or I couldn't find any more reasonable job. So kind of, yeah. But it's kind of, in my feeling, the idea that I'm a designer and therefore I must design is kind of, if we all think that way, then if our software needs this tiny little piece of, say, creating XML files, but no one's job is to create XML files, so we just never launch. So you have to kind of understand that I am part of a team, and thus I do everything, my best to put stuff into production, to make the magic happen.
To be useful.
To be useful, yeah.
Awesome, great. Let's thank Karri for a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.